Hey everybody, this is Brian Yearling, and we're going to do a follow-up to Google Contacts. We've just done a kind of brief run through on Google Contacts and what it is. If you haven't seen that video yet, jump on back and take a look at that if you kind of need a sense of what Google Contacts actually does for you. In this video, we're going to look at an instructional use of Google Contacts. It could be a professional use, it could be a personal use, but we're going to look at a real basic instructional use that most teachers can quickly identify with. And that is sending email out to students, especially now that students in your school may have Gmail accounts in which they can receive communication and communicate with you. It's real nice to have one way to quickly email all of your students without having to type in every one of their email addresses. That way you don't forget anybody, and that way you can be a little bit more efficient in your working day. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to go to Google Contacts again. You can see I'm at Google Contacts. If you don't remember how to get there from Gmail, we can do that if I'm in Gmail just by simply clicking Contacts, and it will open up a new window for you, or a new tab for you. I'm in the Chrome browser, as you can see. And I presently do not have any groups set up for me, but I'm going to start just by simply doing this. I'm going to type in, select New Group, and we're going to give this one a really funky name like Test Group 1. You'd obviously want to name that with something a little bit more efficient. So I'm going to create another group. Okay. Something like Hour 1 English. Now, if you're an English teacher and you have Hour 1, you probably can identify with this. One of the problems you're going to run into, though, over the longevity of your career and over your use of Google Apps is that this Hour 1 English is going to merge with next semester or next year's Hour 1 English. So one of the things that we recommend is to simply give it a, something like 12-13 for the school year. That way, in future years, if I create a Google group and then I start to get confused on what they are, I can come back out and delete this year's Hour 1 English. So that's one thing that you might want to do. Now, when you look at the two of those, right, the more descriptive you can be, the better off. So what I'm going to do is we're going to work with Hour 1 English. Okay. So when I select that, there are presently no contacts in this group. And the easy way to get contacts in this group is to create them. Once I've selected it, and you'll note it's selected because it's in red, I'll come on up here and I'll see my little guy with the plus symbol there. When I click on it, I get this box, and I can simply start typing. Let's see. All right. And I can add. And so now I've got a contact in there. So now I've got one of my students from the class in there. And I'm going to add another one. Now, this can be an incredibly inefficient way of doing things. So we can put strings of them together if we want. Let's see. I'll put my work email here. And if I place a comma and then no space between it, I can start putting other people in as well. So, and I can just keep typing that way. So that's another way that I can do that. Now, understanding, though, that your data entry is truly only as good as, or your contact list, I should say, is truly only as good as your data entry. One of the things that you realize very quickly is that this can be a pretty inefficient way of doing things. Now, some schools will have these lists set up for you, and they'll be delivered to you dynamically. But there are ways that we can have students, for instance, get this information to you. One way that students can get this information to you is to simply have them email you first. And when they email you something, a brief bio at the beginning of a semester or the beginning of a class or something like that, maybe have them turn in some sort of formative assessment to you via email. That's one way that you can get that information and kind of check between the two and say, okay, so here are the emails that are coming in, and I can start adding that way. In the follow-up that I'm going to talk about is just another way, which would be to set up a Google form and collect student data that way to create more efficient email groups. But generally speaking, let's just say that you're going to make a small group, small email group here, like a student council group, or maybe the third grade teachers, or something like that. We can do that really easily, again, by clicking New Group. My colleagues. All right, clicking on My Colleagues, and then simply adding some information about them there. So, all right, so, and then we start adding people to that. Okay. Now, once we have a group created, notice I was saying, what happens if you want to get rid of a group or do something different with that group? I can go ahead and manage my group. So test group 1 was a really poorly named group. I don't need it anymore. It was just for a short period of time. Even though I have no contacts in here right now, if I had 100 in here, the same would apply. So I select test group 1. I know that it's selected because it's in red. I select more, and I can say, you know what, I really need to rename that group to something like Hour 2 English 12-13. Okay, so we can rename them if that makes sense. We can also say, now it's red, which means it's still selected. I can delete that group if I want to. Importing and exporting. So let's say that you create a group and then you want to share that group with your colleagues without having to send it all mail and then copy your colleague in on that. One way that you can, share groups with people is export them. It'll deliver that particular group to them in a CSV format, so we can export that. See some downloading. And then your colleague can come along. And so there's our form there. Okay. Your colleague can import contacts, choose the file. Let's see where that guy went. It's in here somewhere. Let me see. There it is. So there's that CSV import. And right there it is, imported 424.13. And then I can rename that into Hour 3 English for 12-13. So you can, if you wanted to delegate the responsibilities, you can create a contact list or a contact group and then share it with your colleagues. That's a pretty nice feature that we find is used sometimes. A couple of other things. You can print contact sheets. One of the things I'll warn you about now is that printing from Google can be a little bit catchy and wonky at times and not always give you exactly what you're looking for, but you certainly can do it. Find and merge duplicates is a nice feature. Let's say you've got a contact that's listed in your contacts multiple times. By doing find and merge duplicates, and you'll see that message back here as well, it will get rid of your duplicates if there are any. Restoring contacts, I believe, is after we've deleted them. But what we want to do also is be able to get rid of groups, and so I'm going to delete this group here. It does not mean that you cannot email the people who are in that group any longer. It simply means that that group fails, that no longer exists. So why would you do any of this? Why would it matter? Well, let's use our Hour 1 English 12-13. I've created that group. I come along, and within a couple of weeks, I want to get my first message out to those students. I'm now in Gmail. I'm not in contacts any longer. When I type compose, I can, if I know the name of that group, Hour 1, I can simply select the correct group. Let's say I want to mail multiple groups because I want to get all my students on this because it's a important message. Let's see if Hour 2 comes up here. And one thing we've noticed with contacts is sometimes they will take a little while after you've created them to come on over into the mail side of things. All right. So we'll see if we can jumpstart this here quick. There's our Hour 2 friends. We have nothing in there. That may be part of the problem. I'll do this. All right, so we've got contacts in there. Let's see if we can do that. Hour to... Yeah, so if we wait a little while, I bet you this would pop up. It generally has been something we've noticed with it, that contact groups can take a little while to generate. And by a little while, that can be anywhere from a few minutes to a few hours. So this is something I definitely recommend you do at the beginning of the semester or in advance of your need of these groups. So again, all I have to do though is type the hour 1, and I should get those groups to pop up, and then I can go off and work from there. So that's a really nice feature. I'll show you the other side of that, which is if we are in Google Drive and we want to share, for instance, a particular resource with certain individual. I can go into that Google Drive, and we'll talk more about Google Drive for those of you who need that in separate videos. And now if I want to share, I can do so by typing, and now you can see our hour 2 has popped in. So there it took only a couple of minutes, but it's here now. And I can now share this particular resource out with my students or whoever's in that contact group and give them editing rights. So this is where the efficiency of contacts comes into play. And this is why you want to set up your contact groups early and use them often, because it's going to eliminate a lot of extra time on your part on typing, but it's also going to eliminate the need for you to to type that list and maybe forget somebody. The last thing I want to share with you about contacts is this, and it's something you need to be aware of as a teacher. As new kids come in, for instance, I get a new student who arrives 3 weeks into the school year. Adding a new contact is just the same process. I click plus and I add them, and now from that point forward, that contact will be added to anything that's being done. Let's do this correctly. Anything that's sent out through that contact group. So important for you to understand that adding to them is just as easy, but we can export, we can import from colleagues who've shared, we can delete them, we can use them in Gmail, and we can use them in Google Drive. Lots of uses for contacts and mail groups. So hopefully makes sense to you, and if not, feel free to jump back into the video and watch how it's done.